Tallman, Counselor at Large. We have a healthy agenda. We have a few people here, so we're going to get going right away. Item number 2 and 3, if I could have a motion to take them up together.
Well, first, item number 1, we got the minutes today, and they're incorrect. The minutes stated that Counselor Tallman was not here, and he was here. So I think that we should send these back to Ryan for modification.
And item number 1, the minutes of the meeting are incorrect. We're going to send them back to our administrative assistant for modification. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved.
Make a motion to take item number 2 and item number 3 off the table.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item 2 and 3 come under my name as all financial transfers, but they are, item number 2 is the amount of $2,221.65. This is being taken from the DPW's professional services in the amount of, I believe it's 78, and authorized from the professional services in the amount of, and you cannot read this thing at all.
This is different, yes.
Hang on, I apologize. You gotta get a permanent auditor. We're working on it, Rory. We're working on it. Anyways, Rory Casey is here for both of these as we figure out the dollar amount. Rory, you want to come forward? We're going by the agenda, but this will be real quick, and there's one more to be real quick. Then we'll go right to the police stuff. Rory, this is both of these items deal with the prior year Grin and Barrett bills. At the last Finance Committee meeting, as we were looking at them, we knew they were important to pass, and we understand, they're tardy and late, and we understand the history. But we ended up having 2 together, and Mike could not explain it. He just said, the money was taken. But could you run us through this, and do you have the amounts in front of you?
I have what's on the agenda. I can pull that up on my phone. I'm not checking my texts, so I wasn't being rude. So what we have here are 2 separate bills. I agree that the orders, the way they're written, are
Confusing.
with these $78 and $95 coming from the same line. So let's just assume that's all added together. Basically what happened, this goes back a few years. And, every session, the city government has a 2-year session with council especially. And every session, a portrait is done of those representatives, elected representatives, council, mayor, treasurer, and clerk. When the budget is set, $3,000 is put in as professional services in the city council's budget line. That didn't happen every other year, I should say. It doesn't need to be in every year because it pays for the portrait. A few years back, that didn't get included, and that is really no one's fault. It was a change in the position of administrative assistant that wasn't known that needed to be put in. So at that point, we did try to identify another source of funds. It was an odd year. You guys might remember, Councilor Sullivan, I don't even think you were on the council at the time. We had a flurry of orders, and we had some special meetings in June. And unfortunately, this particular transfer, to transfer money into that line to pay for this, didn't make the cut. Fast forward to the next session, something similar. So where we're at right now is we've got 2 bills from previous fiscal years that need to be paid. There is money in the current fiscal year's budget to pay for the portrait for this last session that ended in December.
Rory, can I just
Absolutely.
ask you, we never took the picture, though.
Yeah, so you will need to, or people can submit headshots. Some counselors just use the same headshot every year. You can take a new picture. So for the previous year's photos, photos actually were taken, but like any vendor, if they don't get paid, they're not going to deliver the product. So what Grin and Barrett said is, hey, listen, you got to pay the bill. Now, all this was submitted in the fall. For some reason, it never was put on your agenda. It obviously needed to be voted on. For some reason, wasn't put on your agenda in the fall. We identified a source of funds. City Hall has in the DPW budget a professional services line or a supplies line, and it had a little bit of extra money in it. So we identified that as a legitimate budget line that could pay for this expense, seeing that these items do get hung at City Hall. The current fiscal year, fiscal 18 that we're in right now, also has the money to pay for what will be a portrait from the previous session, but current fiscal year. So by approving these tonight, and then at your meeting on the 15th, you will allow for the previous bills to be paid and allow for Ryan to process a requisition for the portrait that you're absolutely correct. The picture should have been taken sometime in November, December. And then when we get to next fiscal year, 2019, we can worry about that, or 2020 as it were, we can worry about that next portrait.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you, Rory.
Yep.
Thank you for the explanation.
Yep.
So, as Councilor McGivern said, I can't wait till we have a full-time. These two orders are just, questions that I had at the city council meeting was
Yep.
not so much not voting for these.
Sure.
I'm gonna vote for them. I mean,
Yep.
service is done, we gotta pay. But these are just poorly worded orders.
Yeah, I would have to talk with Bellamy to find out exactly why they're worded that way, but I honestly read them on your agenda for the first time. Again, I thought they were submitted in the fall, late fall, early winter. They were not. That's when the requisitions were actually produced at DPW, because we, and as you alluded to, Councilor Leahy, we were trying to get this taken care of prior to the end of the last session, so councilors who no longer are on, Jordan, Lopez, Graney, would be able to take part in that. They still can. I'm sure Ryan could set something up, or if they would like to submit headshots, we could do that as well.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is each one of these is gonna be $3,000 total?
It's,
I have the amount, if I can
Yeah, of
course.
just intervene quickly. I'll go by the invoice.
Yes.
And then you can tell me if I'm wrong. But for the picture that was taken and never paid for, the total due is $2,221.65. There was some type of an $18.35 payment made.
yeah, and then there's two prior year invoices. That's why you have two orders in front of you, and then you've got the current one. This goes back a couple of sessions.
I have no further, thank you.
Yep. Because I know that I finally got the invoice. Normally, the mayor's office doesn't get involved in this, but obviously we wanted to see these bills get paid. That's why I got involved, and I finally saw the invoices. I don't have them on me right now. I could probably pull them up in my email. But the invoices are, there were two separate invoices for two separate portraits.
Makes sense.
Yep.
First portrait, Roy, can we do it this way?
Absolutely.
We'll end this and hopefully get them their money. Is item number one the first portrait?
I believe so. Again, I don't have it right in front of me, and I
And
apologize.
what year is that?
So let's see, the last one, you've got the 2012, 2013. So we're talking about the 2014, 2015, and then the 2016, 2017.
In the 2016, 2017, we got an invoice, but we didn't take the picture yet.
Yeah, I believe so, yes. Yep,
Okay, so that's why we're doing it in the
Yep.
prior year, because we ordered the picture, but then they
yes.
said,
It goes back a fiscal year, so that's what the bills are for.
okay.
That was, okay.
Yeah.
That in itself, I understand it now, but that's
Yep.
a confusing way for Grin and Barrett to do business.
Yep,
I mean, technically, they're going to be doing the work in this fiscal year, but
yep.
because they invoiced us, we're going to have to pay for last year, this year, even though they're taking the picture this year. Is there any other questions on this?
I make a motion to approve it.
On the motion to approve both the dollars amounts, which the total amount, if we're going to, and we'll pay them once the service is done, but the total amount is $4,154.65. So that's where we get the two different pictures, and once it's paid, we'll have two different pictures of all elected officials, the mayor, treasurer, and all the city council.
Yep. And the
On
city
that
clerk.
motion for also paying a prior fiscal year, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Roy, I think you have one more?
If you want to take it up now, that's fine. It is the last item on the agenda.
Like to get you out of here.
Well,
You don't want to be here all night, do you?
I might appreciate that, but I don't make as much as these guys over here, so.
It's actually, it's actually item number 12.
12, suspend the rules and take up item number 12.
All those in favor? Any opposed? This is an appropriation of $79,000 from free cash for software license $44,000 and systems hardware $35,000. Motion is to take up the table for discussion. Rory, this is the IT department, and
That's correct.
I believe you're taking the lead on this.
Yes. So as this committee knows, it's a very rare thing for the city to come back and need an infusion in cash into our IT budget. We handle that budget pretty well. We had some extenuating circumstances this fiscal year. Some of you guys might have experienced it. I know all of us at City Hall, the Annex, DPW, Council on Aging, Wisteria-Hearst, et cetera. This past summer, in fiscal 18, our phone system crashed. We had, it started with our satellite sites, so DPW, Wisteria-Hearst, Council on Aging, War Memorial, and about 20% of the Annex crashed. And so, basically that happened on July 31st. That day, we reached out to...
Rory, can I ask you, to whose fault? Is it the person who oversees all the phone, whatever company that is? Or if it's God? Or...
Let's not force majeure, right? It's not necessarily someone's fault. We knew that we needed to look at a new phone system, and we actually were in the process of looking at that. This started under the previous purchasing director. We had some pretty astronomical quotes. $5 million at one point was quoted. That included all of the schools as well. When we saw that and we looked at the work product of that particular consultant, this is going back a couple of years, we said, they don't know what they're talking about. Let's get somebody else. So we brought a gentleman by the name of Rob Chambers on board. He was already working with us to develop an RFP for us to go out and take a look at this. But we knew that it was going to be a sizable capital expense when you take the whole city into account, including all of the schools, central office, and so on. So we were in that process when on July 31st of this year, those satellite locations went down. And what it is that the type of phone system that we had, we were using Verizon, but the type of phone system that we had was over 23 years old and had reached end of life. Now, we didn't know it had reached end of life. We didn't realize how dire it was until the actual satellite locations crashed. At the time, Valley Communications was our not a provider. Verizon is who we actually paid for the phone numbers, but Valley was the vendor that serviced this. They reached out to the manufacturer and they said that there's nothing they could do. No cards, no servers, nothing could be done to fix this. So we said to our consultant, Rob, we need to move on this quick. What's the solution? We brought in, we got some numbers from Valley Communications. We also got numbers from Crocker Communications. Both of them are on state contract. Even though this is a large number, we don't necessarily have to go out to bid, a normal 30B bid. We can solicit quotes. The Crocker quote came in less than Valley Communication. We went with Valley Communication. And starting in mid-August, we implemented a three-phase project. We're in the...
Rory, you said that Crocker came in last, but then you went with Valley?
No, we went with Crocker.
Oh.
Yep, we went with Crocker.
Okay, you said
Yep.
Valley.
Did I say Valley?
Yeah,
I apologize. I misspoke. I'm just looking at my notes here, and I read Valley.
How do you spell cracker?
Crockeer.
It's good. It's a big company. It's a...
Big company, and actually a number of Holyoke residents that were very excited to take part of this project, very excited to help us in a time of need, to the point where they've even taken out some ads in Business West about the work they've done in Holyoke to help us get back online, because it really was a dire situation. We had to go out and buy cell phones to give to city departments, and that was the only way we could communicate.
So Rory, so that's 35. Is that for the actual physical phone?
Well, no. So, and that's what I'll get to. So, what happened was part of it, yes. What the transfer that's in front of you tonight isn't going to pay for any of the phone equipment. If this phone system issue hadn't taken place, we wouldn't be in front of you asking for a transfer. Our IT budget would have come in, right about on budget. But when we moved to a voice over IP system, so we're having to buy new servers, new switches, new hardware. These are all legitimate IT expenses, and we're in the middle of the summer. In a normal year, and granted, fiscal 18 hasn't been a normal year where we certify free cash in the early to mid-fall. In the summer months, the only source of funds that we have at that point would either be, let's go to stabilization or use existing budget. And at that point, where we're at, using the existing IT budget was what made the most sense. We knew all along that eventually we'd have to come back and find money to backfill the IT budget to take care of our normal IT expenses. And that's what I'm here tonight to talk about. As I mentioned, the first phase was getting all the satellite sites back online. That's what we did. We were done with that by September. But because now we had a bifurcated system, for example, if I wanted to just dial an extension or transfer a call to DPW, which is something we deal with all the time, somebody calls DPW, just transfer it down, because the mayor's office 5510 is, we get a lot of the calls. We couldn't do that because we had two different systems now. We had a Verizon system, which is normal copper wire, and we had a voice over IP system. So we had to continue on. So where we're at right now is all of City Hall, Annex, all the satellite locations, with the exception of a handful of phones.
See, satellite, are you including the schools too?
Nope, schools are separate. Schools are separate, although we are now looking at schools, but that will be its own capital expense in the future. We're working with the schools on that because it's not an emergency situation there. Some of the schools are more up to date than the City Hall system was. I mean, case in point, our voicemail system went down a couple years ago, and we found out that it's still using 5.5-inch floppy DOS disks. That's how antiquated some of our systems are. So we're trying to update these. So where we're at right now is we're in phase 3, which means retirement board, some of the back bays and DPW, some of the places where we actually had to do new wiring to bring it out. And at this point, all of that has been accounted for. So the $79,000 transfer that's in front of you is just to pay pretty much bills, charges we've already incurred during the months of March and April, and will incur in May and June to work with HG&E, who's our IT provider, to be able to pay those bills. So that could be monthly licensing fees for our backup system, Symantec. There's a little bit of money to help out with some of the stuff in the police department, the fire department. For example, they had a server, their dispatch server at the fire department went down. We have to fix that and do that. So these are the types of things that come up that, we are anticipating.
Are they antiquated too, the police and the fire?
Not anymore. We've upgraded them. And of course, the big bond that you guys had done for the communications, really helped bring us into the 21st century. Unfortunately, the gentleman who had worked for years with the police department passed away in July. He wasn't a police employee, he was a contractor. So we've brought on Wally Computer. They've been there working with the police department and the chief's IT team, to make sure that everything's...
You're happy with them? If you don't mind.
The work's been good. We're looking down the future. The work they've been doing has been first rate. Let's say that.
Okay.
No issues with Wally. We're just looking at expenses long term.
Yep. And as are we. In the future, not tonight, I know the mayor wants to come in and have a conversation with the council about the way IT is run in the city and looking for maybe some efficiencies and maybe bringing some things in-house, contracting and having some backup. But that's not the conversation tonight. That certainly involved the police department and the fire department. The conversation tonight is just, if not for this phone system crash, we wouldn't need this money. But it did crash. And
It would have happened sooner or later?
We knew that something was coming. We knew that we needed to upgrade. We just didn't expect it to happen as soon as it did. The only silver lining, if anything, is that we ended up with a great partner in Crocker, and the upgrade cost us probably $100,000 less than we thought it was going to be. So this $79,000 is about what it costs for us to upgrade the servers, the switches, new wiring, hardware, new phones, and some training, and then we're going to have, now reoccurring monthly fees, just like a phone bill and anything else. So that's all this is. This is just going to help us pay our bills for the rest of the fiscal year, and, barring anything else, we shouldn't have a problem getting through between now and the end of June.
Rory, who is the day-to-day go-to person, department for phones?
So it had traditionally been purchasing, which we couldn't figure out exactly why, but that's where the phone budget had been. And I know
David Martin's volunteered, I think.
Dave might have, yeah, absolutely. And I know he had a good relationship with Valley Communications. That's where it had been. What we're doing, and you'll see this in the budget that you're going to receive at your next meeting, we've actually transferred some of that responsibility, just the regular Board of Health or building department has cell phones. Those are simple bills that just get paid monthly. That'll continue to get taken care of out of purchasing. But now, since this has become an IT expense, we've taken dollar for dollar the amount of money out of the purchase. So it's level funded, but it's in two new lines. One line in purchasing, and then another line in the IT budget, and it will be taken care of by our IT providers moving forward.
And I want to be the devil's advocate, because
Yep.
someone's going to ask us a week from tomorrow.
Yes.
Who's overseeing the cell phones? Who's overseeing, who has them?
Sure. Well, it's mostly taken care of out of purchasing. We, obviously, in order to have a city cell phone, you need to be a city employee. And what's nice about government plans is we actually get a pretty good rate. So it's unlimited data. It's not like somebody's watching a bunch of Netflix and we're paying $300 a month because they're going 30 gigs or anything like that. There's no issues like that. So for the most part, it gets taken care of out of purchasing. Certain departments do pay for it themselves. Some departments have their own phone line. But that's how it's taken care of.
There is some oversight, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Continuous purchasing, but
Yes,
as
yes.
always, the department has.
There's
gotta
absolutely oversight, yes.
Be wise.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I make a motion to approve it.
Motion made second to adopt and approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Rory,
Wonderful.
thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rory.
Chief, John, Sarge.
Can you shut your mic off? Quick second.
Welcome.
Chief, how are you? Chief,
Welcome.
Chiefs, plural.
On item number, if we go to item number 6, it's the Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, 53A, Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Enforcement Grant. This, we're being asked to accept the grant and establish the fund and method appropriate for the counting of the grant. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? If we could get a quick rundown, I think this is a reoccurring grant, if I'm correct.
Yes, it's, there's no matching funds. The grant's for $5,625. It's so we can put officers out on specifically pedestrian and bicycle safety issues enforcement. It'd be basically 2 officers, 4-hour shifts, a couple times a month for May, June, July, and August.
Yep. Councilor Leahy.
So I know we used to, I think when you first started here, we used to have a great presence out with the bikes. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the bikes got kind of old and outdated. Do we have new bikes?
I couldn't give you an exact number of bikes we have. We do upgrade them every so often. We do get officers out.
But I think it's a great thing, especially during the
Well,
summer.
right, in the community
People love
policing aspect, it's fantastic. But we try to stay on top of that. But I also have, I'm gonna tell you, I probably got half a dozen junks in the basement too.
Right. Maybe we could put them on the Hell Holyoke Forum and sell them, get some money into your department. What about the Segways? This is before your time, but we had, I think, a handful of Segways.
Yeah, I think I still have maybe 2 or 3 of them rusting away in the basement.
They don't work.
No. And we actually looked at, was there something we could do to sell them? And they're not worth anything unless you buy new batteries.
And that's
And
the
that-
expensive
and
part,
that's-
right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no chance we can rent them out for a fee and make some money for the city?
Well, again, we'd have to buy new batteries, and I don't think it's worth the expense.
Councilor Tomlin.
Yeah, Chief, what you stated the amount is how much, 5,000?
$625.
Okay, and predominantly, what months? May to July?
May through September.
Or
It has to all be spent down by, I believe, by September 30th.
Right, September 30th is the end of the contract.
Okay, and I mean, they basically put people in different areas of the city, all over the city, every ward? Not just certain
Yeah,
wards?
but, predominantly, it would be the downtown area, because where we're having the most of the pedestrian issues, crosswalk stuff.
Right, okay. And this being used before, was there some citations issued too with people, if there was issues with people?
Yes, these are mainly, you have two different types of patrols. You have the sweeper patrols and the crosswalk decoy patrols. And what the sweeper patrols do is they go around and enforce any type of pedestrian violations or any type of bicycle violations. And what the crosswalk decoy does is you have a plainclothes officer in the crosswalk and another officer in a cruiser watching that crosswalk. So if motor vehicles don't allow them to cross, or if a car stops on the pedestrian crosswalk, those type of violations will enforce.
Okay, I think it's a good time, and a lot of communities, you see that all the time, people in the crosswalk, and the cars are getting ready to cross in different parts of the city, and people don't stop. And I know we have some, of course, Amherst, Northampton actually have the cone out there, or the lights, or the flashing light. I mean, it's fancy stuff, but that's something that I think would be great for here, but of course, the cost is really expensive. And the usually two people at a time?
That's correct.
For how long, 4 hours?
4-hour blocks.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve it?
Second. Motion made and second to adopt, accepting both the grant and setting up the funds appropriate and for accounting for the expenditures. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Joining us is our City Council President and member of this committee, Councilor Todd McGee.
5,620.
Yeah, we got to do some work, Councilor McGee, because these orders don't have anywhere near the amount of information. You have to look to the attachments, and then the ones we just read before. So we're going to work hard to get a permanent auditor, but to work with the mayor's office on getting all the language on these transfers. It's getting to be difficult to process. Well, we got the police here, items. Item 8 is an order for $19,600 from pay reserve officer to education and training, $12,600, personnel equipment, $7,000. Motion to take off the table. Discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? Chief?
Yes, that's the reserve officer line item account that we have. At this particular juncture, I have 5 working reserve officers. And that's only recently. I had like 1 or 2 prior to that. And then I have another, 12 reserve officers that still need to be trained. So we've hired them, but they're on paper. They're not. So this 19.6 expenditure is, quite frankly, it's to send 7 of the 12 to the Reserve Academy in June at $1,800 a slot, which is 12.6. And then to, equipment for them, specifically for them, is another $1,000 apiece, hence the 19.6. So it'd be transferring existing money, not asking for additional money, to cover the education and training of these officers, of 7 of them, and equipment for them.
And you're going to send them to the academy?
The Reserve Academy in
Reserve
June.
Academy.
In June.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve it?
Chief, real quick, are you going to replace the reservists when they become permanent?
Yes, we are. It's more, I hate to say it, it's like a revolving door. We're trying to hire as quick as we can, and with the reserves, we'd really like to pump our numbers up. So, in this particular example, I'm telling you, I have 12 on paper that have yet to been trained. I'm going to send 7. I'm holding 5 back. But the ones, I'm being strategic in how I'm doing that, because the 7 I'm gonna send, or 5 of the 10 we just hired, are actually the second half of the list, not the first half of the list. And the reason I say that is, we're gonna probably be looking to put officers in a full-time academy in the fall. And when I do that, we draw right from our reserve list. So if I send the top of the list to training, if you know what I'm saying, shortly thereafter, I'll be sending them to the full-time academy. So I'm trying to prevent that from happening, if that makes sense.
Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to adopt, and recommend the full city council to adopt. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. And item number 9. Wait a minute. No, 9 is,
Yes, 9 is it, sir.
okay, I'm sorry. 9 is a transfer from police reserve officers of $20,000 and from snow tow $13,000 to motor vehicle repairs $20,000, motor vehicle supplies $13,000. Motion to take off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Chief?
And again, this is trying to work within the budget that we have. $20,000 of that would be going to motor vehicle repairs. And, you know, our cars that, you know, high mileage, a lot of repairs, the costs go up. This would be in lieu of coming back, asking for free cash to pay for those repairs. And part of that, another $13,000 from the snow tows is to provide motor vehicle supplies. Again, making use with what we have in the budget.
Chief, you may have said it a minute ago, but the reason there's a surplus in reserves is
Our reserve numbers are down.
They're down. Okay.
And I mean, we just hired 10, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, but we only hired them on paper. We haven't done anything with them.
Any further discussion? Councilor McGee?
13,000 for supplies, what supplies?
Motor vehicle supplies, tires, batteries, anything that's, I don't know, a dinged mirror, you gotta buy a new mirror. And I'll give you an example, we started the year with 60,000 in that budget in motor vehicle supplies. We've already spent 75.
So, as a follow-up, we get you new cars.
But yeah, and that was, what, almost 2 years ago?
Right, so that's where we're going with it. So, 2 years old, the new SUVs, are we saying that they're more costly now? That's why we're spending over on the budget, or what's the difference?
No, we used to replace cars every 12 to 18 months. We rotated out of that, and then we went for years, and then, maybe we got 3 cars, maybe we got 6 cars. We fell way behind on our rotation, so all our costs have gone up significantly.
Right, so where do we stand with the fleet?
I put a request in the mayor for 6 cars.
So you did put,
Oh, yes, I did.
when?
I don't know, maybe a month or so ago? Right.
Any feedback from the mayor? I know it's been kind of a delayed year with the
Yeah.
issues in the auditing department, but
I'm hoping to get cars.
no, I understand, because, one time we averaged four a year and try to do 4 every year, and that worked, because, and this isn't even counting, accidents and, even a newer vehicle being taken off the road because of an accident or the life of the vehicle changing quickly.
And I appreciate that, and City Council President Todd McGee and I have talked at length about, the need for police cars. If we could just get 3 cars, every 12 months, but we're not doing that on a 12-month cycle. We're going 18 months, we're going 2 years, and we've been doing that now for really almost 7 years that I've been here, and because of that, we've been falling behind.
People don't realize they're running 24/7. They don't get a break.
And keep in mind too, going forward in next fiscal year, it takes about a year for us to get the cars once we order them. So even if we get them next month, we're not really gonna get them until probably close to the next fiscal year.
I think Todd asked it, but I'm not too sure if I'm gonna ask it, is, because I saw a report somewhere, are SUVs still the way to go, or is that changing?
I think everybody's going over to SUVs. The only significant cost on that is with any all-wheel drive car, if you ding tires, and it's got certain type of mileage on it, you have to replace all the tires. So, but what we've tried to do is, when that happens, is if you're pulling old tires off, you put them over here. So depending on what the tread loss is, if you kind of have a supply of those, you try to match that up. But the tread variances have to be close. It's the expense of an all-wheel drive car.
Any further questions or discussion? Yeah. Counselor Sullivan, sorry.
Thanks. Chief, what's the $13,000 in snow tow? What is that?
We started the year with 19,000. It's, we had a mild winter, and that's to, when the DPW is, the parking ban in effect, and officers go out, and we're shorthanded with what's on patrol staff, we actually hire officers to go out and ticket and tow cars. We had a mild snow winter, even though it was late in the year. That's a balance we have in that account.
If there's no further discussion, the motion on the floor is to adopt, to refer to the full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Councilmember Given,
Yes.
I mentioned to you the other day, there's an item on here, I think item 10. I don't know how that landed there. That's not something
Correct.
we're in need of.
So I make a motion to give the leave withdraw?
Motion to deny.
Denied. So,
Second.
I think that should conclude.
what was that's the,
It was 10,000 for free cash for, I think, motor vehicle supplies.
oh, wait, that's not you. That's why it's not, that's, that's the other chief behind you. A motion to deny,
I'm sorry, John. Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
Guys,
Enjoy.
be safe, have a good night. Yes, for the other chief. It's gone. They moved fast on
Oh,
you.
we got a couple, we better hurry up or Paul's gonna beat you in. So, the mystery is solved. This is item number 10. It's the amount of $10,000 from free cash to motor vehicles. A motion to take it off the table for discussion. All those in favor, any opposed? So moved. Chief Pond from the Fire Department.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. For the same reasons as Chief Neiswanger, our vehicles are getting older. In fact, our ladder trucks are past the age at this point. I did an annual report, which should be at City Council. It was for everyone to see. If you read through it, you would see that we have a ladder truck that's 16 years old, a ladder truck that's 17 years old, which are both past the date of frontline service, and our reserve ladder truck is 40 years old. That 40-year-old ladder truck is no longer in service because the cost to repair it is not worth the price to put it back into service. So currently, we're using our Quint as a reserve ladder when needed when we're rotating ladder trucks.
What is the age of the Quint?
The Quint is, I want to say 14 years or 13 years old now. It's getting there. All that information is in the annual report. And that segues into this 10,000. With an aging fleet, not only those ladder trucks, but also our fire prevention vehicles, command vehicles, the cost of maintenance is going up. The $10,000 will hopefully bridge us to the end of the next fiscal year, till the next fiscal year starts, to get some repairs done there in case we have some major repairs coming up. We have some scheduled, some maintenance items, and that $10,000 will take care of that. If we have any major expenses, I'll be back in looking for more money. So we're at that point.
How's the pumpers doing in terms of age and wear and tear?
The pumpers were in good shape because we bonded for some a few years ago. Initially, the KMEs had some emissions issues because the new DEF fluid You have to add fluid in for emissions. It's a whole other ball of wax. Created some issues. A lot of that's been taken care of through the KME Corporation to rectify those problems. But we have 3 frontline pumps that are brand new or newer from the KMEs, and we have a C grade that's probably 8 years old. So we're in good shape with that, but our reserve pumpers, kind of shaky. I won't be in for a couple years to get those, so.
And the 1 or 2 attack vehicles.
The TAC vehicles are out of service now. They're out of their prime. We have one that we run every now and then, if need be, but the other one is out of service.
Because,
Age, we don't
Age,
use them.
okay.
We use apparatus to respond. Since we have the new action ambulance in, they take up a lot of the medical emergencies. We still respond, but we've cut back on some of our calls that we go to for that.
because it kind of goes hand in hand if we're responding with a pumper for a medical dispatch, you're putting wear and tear on the pumper.
Correct.
Any,
Wow.
Councilor Hay?
Yeah, now I feel old because I think it was my first year as a city councilor, we voted for those 2, those quick attack vehicles, and now they're not being used because they're old.
They're old.
Wow.
You feel old. I'm on my 4th ladder truck.
I remember we had a ladder truck too, and I remember it was one of my first year here, and Matt Healy, Councilor Healy, and I went up in the bucket, and it was a long night. I was frightened. So God bless all the firefighters who can do that, because I can't do that.
Thank you.
However, engine number 2 was browned out. So what's the verbiage now? It's just offline?
It's offline. In fact, right around the same time that the reorganization plan was implemented, one of our older reserve engines basically was taken out of service due to a blown engine and broken beyond repair, not to mention it was aged
So is it
beyond.
still called engine 2?
So engine 2 is now reserve, and it'll be engine 7.
So where's engine 7 now?
Engine 7's a reserve. Engine 7, we move the numbers around. The one that's out is out. We have engine 1, engine 3, engine 5, and engine 6 that are frontline pumps.
So engine 2 is now engine 7, and that's the one that's 40 years old?
No, that's truck 3, a ladder truck.
All right, so engine 7 now. So when you say in reserves, does that mean it's if we have a massive fire, and God hope we don't, somebody will hop in that, or a whole crew would hop in that and get to the fire?
Correct.
Where is that housed?
The reserve engine,
Yes,
there's one at headquarters and there's one at the Station 5.
So besides the engine 7, what else is there reserve?
There's 2 reserve engines, no reserve trucks at this time.
So what's the other engine? 7 and what?
8,
8. Okay, all right, thank you.
yes.
Any further discussion? Councilor Tomlin?
Thanks, Chief, for coming in. The repair and maintenance of vehicles, who actually does that now?
Currently the DPW, but I'm sure you'll know when the budget's coming out that we are looking for our own dedicated mechanic. DPW's done a great job trying to keep up with this, but you really need an emergency vehicle technician to take care of those vehicles. And that's one of the problems that we see as a fire department, because you need that skilled technician to take care of those special tasks, just like working on heavy equipment. So when the next budget, the DPW will be looking for an additional mechanic, and that'll be a mechanic that's going to be specifically a fire department emergency vehicle technician mechanic,
Right.
which I've been pushing for 6 years. So
Well, yeah, I know
hopefully
we had,
support.
I know years ago we had our own mechanics up on Hampton Street, and then they did away with that. And it was a lot of cost because as things were sent out, I mean, you save on benefits, but you're paying now to send something to Connecticut for whatever the ladder, the trucks, the air packs that have to be checked, and over the years, I know the cost has been high for the repairs, especially if you need a vehicle.
Correct.
You gotta send it, or have somebody come up here. Was it Connecticut you were using for a while someplace?
Correct. A company in Connecticut. Now we still use the same companies down there. We use a company out in Albany, New York for the engines, and there's one in Hopkinton, Mass. So there's really no mechanics in this area that can take care of these vehicles without being, that's why you need a special mechanic to take care of them.
Right, and if this goes through, that person will be housed at the DPW, but just work specifically on your vehicles?
Correct. And that would be another problem as well. When it's snowing, you expect the plows to be out plowing. Well, if a fire engine goes down and a ladder truck goes down, we have no reserve ladder truck, we need a mechanic get that thing up in service right away. If they're working on snow plows, they have conflicts right there.
Yeah, right.
The same thing with the police department.
Yeah, I talked to the chief earlier about that, and sometimes they need the vehicle right away, and they don't have the mechanic down there to do it. They have to send it to a place locally, and it can be very costly.
Costly and length and time.
The time to get
They're
it
forever.
back. Yeah. Hey, thank you, chief.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Any other discussion? Any other thoughts or questions? Motion is to adopt, refer to the full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Chief, thank you.
Thank you. Can I
You can.
just say something here? I've been saying for a few years now that we need a new ladder truck. We're at the point now where we actually need 2 new ladder trucks because that one is gone. The other 2 are past the NFPA standards for frontline apparatus. I'm working with the mayor now to put a bond package together for $2.5 million to get 2 new ladder trucks. Just want to bring that to your attention, and I'm sure there'll be more information coming further to explain what we're looking to do, but it's coming. I just want to give you a heads up on that.
Appreciate that.
It's needed, gentlemen, but thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Chief, you too, thank you, be safe.
Sir.
Paul? Ooh, this thing is lively. With us is our city solicitor, Paul Fair, for item number 11, which is a transfer from free cash of $75,000 to an account known as special counsel. Motion to take it off the floor, take it off the table, off the floor.
Second.
Off the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Thank you. If you could, I think we understand the line item. If you could walk us through what's going on, Paul? I believe we just had, not too long ago, our semi-annual executive session on the various litigations against the city.
Yes, Councilor McGivern, and good evening, councilors. We had a litigation update last in November of last year, and I anticipate being available and preparing an update concurrent with the budget season. So any specific questions about outstanding matters and their status and litigation, I'd be happy to address at that time. The request before the committee is a $75,000 transfer into the outside counsel line item. As you may recall, during the budget hearings for fiscal 18, the proposed appropriation was for $150,000. I believe there was some discussion and an comment was made to acknowledging that historically that's in line with what outside counsel has rendered, but to appropriate at $75,000 with anticipation of seeing where things are in 6 months. I was new to the position at that time, so that actually seemed like a reasonable sort of approach. Of course, November free cash was not available, but we did have the litigation update, so we're in the situation now where there's approximately about $53,000 in not delinquent, but late outside counsel bills. Our outside counsel, Attorney Chuck Hema, is aware of the situation. I spoke with him back in the fall, November, December, letting him know that there was likely to be some delay with this. But of course, at this point, we're looking to anticipate what the costs are going to be for the remainder of the fiscal year. I should mention there's $5,741 currently in the outside counsel account. So the request for $75,000 will bring the I think the account full and whole to pay both outstanding expenses as well as what we expect for May and June.
Paul, is there any specific litigation suits that this is geared for, or anything that stands out, or is it just in general what we heard earlier this fiscal year about what's been contracted out?
Well, without, there have been no additional pieces of litigation added to outside counsel since the November update, I believe. There was a matter that was resolved quickly. I think that was that was pending at the time. Yeah.
Anybody else? Councilor Leahy.
And first of all, I always vote to take money outside of the special counsel line item. This is long before you were probably even graduated high school. I was doing this just for the fact that we were getting more specific updates on legal litigation. I like the fact that the law department has to come in front of the finance department and full city council and explain what they're doing. Because years ago, as I said, long before you, if we had $200,000 in the line item, it could be gone with a blink of an eye with a settlement, and we would have no idea. So I think that's good checks and balances. As for the 75,000, how we stay on top of the hourly, whatever they charge per hour. Every city solicitor has always come in here and said, we're getting the best rate going. We're getting the lowest rate going. But then if you look at the amount of hours, which is very hard to get out of the department at times, they're 3 times as what they should be. So I'm just throwing out generalities. How are we staying over the amount of hours that people are working and the hourly rates?
Thank you, Councilor Leahy. So a few points. We do receive, of course, monthly invoices for each individual case with itemized descriptions of services, and those are reviewed. There is I just wanted to make one observation just about the review of expenses. The outside counsel line item cannot be used to pay settlements. So it is.
I'm sorry, what?
The outside counsel line item cannot be used to pay any settlements.
Yeah, it's good
so
to hear.
it is strictly and wholly just the payment of services and reimbursement.
Where do the settlements come from?
The claims.
Oh,
line
claims,
item.
okay.
Yep.
Well,
So it's outside the
where I
law
was going.
departments, but it's often together. So to the point of how do we ensure that not only monthly is what's being billed reflective of the services rendered, but the larger question I think the council raises is that how do we ensure we're getting the best deal? I think the principle of competitive bidding is a little bit complicated with council services where we have existing pieces of litigation. So in that instance, for any matter that is existing, it's the question of whether to change counsel would involve a lot of different factors.
So the $75,000 has nothing to do with any new, this is all ongoing litigation?
That is correct.
There's not one piece, okay.
And I think that, was there anything else?
No. Thank you.
Councilor Sullivan.
Paul, can you tell me, is there any one particular attorney or case that's accounts for an inordinate proportion of this 75,000 or 150,000?
It's a good question, and the amount of money that's paid for a particular matter would be something I'd request to talk about in a executive session, because it could go to what our litigation strategy is, but certainly there's certain matters incur higher expenses than others.
Well, I don't see any reason to go to executive session just to know what we're paying to outside attorneys on a particular case. I don't have to know the name of the case. Is there one group or one that's cost $50,000 or $100,000 out of the 150? we're
Yeah,
using?
I think it'd be fair to say that our federal civil rights cases, the cases involving claims against the police department, generally are very discovery intensive, and that is certainly something that generates litigation costs. So our federal civil rights cases are typically the higher costs, and as council is well aware, the ongoing DIA litigation has also been a significant cost, and certainly can address in further detail at a later date, but hopefully those matters will be resolved soon.
So what firm do we owe the most money to?
Attorney Charles Emma.
And that's concerning federal litigation? Is that what?
Yes, Counselor. He handles two matters involving federal civil rights cases and two matters involving the DIA. I'd say that those particular matters that I'm thinking of seem to be the cost center, as it were.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor McGee?
What do we have for free cash?
I tried to find out today. Nobody answered in the auditor's department, so I left some messages, and I've yet to get a return call. I'm not as good as you, Councilor McGee, with a running tab, but I know it's being done a little different than Brian Smith in terms of what's in front of us.
Because we just did 10 from free cash, this would be 75, and the next one's 79.
164 in total.
Yeah, I mean, we were very close to the end when we were doing the budget. We were doing the balancing of the budget. I'm just trying to, how close are we?
The question, we will have an answer one way or the other by the full city council meeting. I will do that.
Well, there's also an issue of we have to be careful in the sense of there have been times where the auditor has given us free cash requests, but pursuant to the rules, if you go over it, you can't vote on certain ones if you exceed it, so you have to get rid of some to, I just don't want to be passing stuff and we've already exceeded it where we couldn't even vote on one. That has happened, Brian's caught that in the past. So we have to be careful here knowing what that is. That being said, not knowing that number, to you, Paul, we're saying 53,000 in outstanding invoices, mostly to the attorney in Florida. How long of a period is this 53,000 for? 2 months, 3 months, what is it?
4 months. January is about 17,000. February is 12,351. March is 10,645. April is 12,923 and change.
All right. So that covers those bills, and we're saying we need 75, which would then leave roughly, just call it 25 for the last 2 months. We don't see any sight in the sight of this because it's going to be the average of 12,000 a month.
Yes, Councilor, just looking at historically what the costs have been and not expecting a large change in what the sort of trend on some of these cases are. Some are wrapping up, some are gearing up. So estimating it out, about 12,500, 13,000 seems like a safe estimate for the remaining 2 months.
That's for 2 to 3 cases?
No, not 2 to 3 cases. So there's a total of, I believe, 9 matters, 1 on a contingency. Sorry, 6 matters that are fee-based.
Any further discussion? Any further questions? Motion on the floor is to adopt and recommend to the full city council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
4-1. Thank you, Paul. All right, if we could back up just a little bit to item number 4. This is a financial request of $1,000 from the Register of Voters to temporary season.
Sorry.
Motion removed from the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. I had the opportunity to talk with our city clerk, who is also filling in or doing the job of Register of Voters, who is almost back from something they call maternity leave, from what I understand.
Maternity.
I said maternity.
Oh, you said paternity.
I started to, but I said maternity.
Oh.
Which year is your good one?
The left.
And Brenda informed me that the transfer is coming from Susan Mead's account, who has retired, so there's a surplus of funds there. The temporary seasonal is to fill in because of the lack of Susan and some bodies within both departments, but more important, within the Register of Voters, who is in the middle of the census. So the request is for $1,000 to get her through the end of the year with temporary help to tidy up the census itself.
Motion to approve the transfer.
Motion made second to approve. Is there any discussion?
I'll abstain.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Item number 5 is the amount of $4,000 from Pay Plumbing Inspector to Inspections Plumbing. Motion removed from the table for discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. This is the building department. I did not have a chance to talk to Damien.
Was he invited in?
I am not 100% sure. I had asked the administrative assistant sitting behind me, but he's not there.
He's with the CPA.
And we can do two things. It's coming from a salary line item into inspection plumbing. I cannot answer any questions, so I don't know if we,
Motion to table it.
motion is to table it. We will have, I'll explain that at the end. Why don't we just motion to table it? All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved.
Make a motion to take up item number 7.
Item 7 is a grant. Under Mass Chapter General Laws 44, Section 53, we're being asked to accept the provisions of the American Legion Patriotic Events Grant, authorized for the establishment of fund and other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts. Motion to take it off the table. All those in favor?
Under
Any
discussion.
opposed? So moved. Council Leahy?
I might have to abstain. Do we know if this is going to be covering the amount for Boy State?
What's Boy State?
Boy State is it's remember the old page system they used to have at Congress? They have it down in the State House. It's 2 boys get selected from the high school, and they go down, and the American Legion is one of the sponsors. It is the sponsor.
Correct me if I'm wrong, when Jesus Pereira came in, he
Yes.
said he received money to help offset the flags and everything they were gonna do, of which he took money from that account in order to pay his seasonal, or one of his employees, because it was short in the budget. We told him you have to receive that and refer it through the
Correct.
council to accept money.
Okay, so you think this is for
I think
flags?
that's what this
This,
is for.
this is $1,000 coming from Legion Paper Pulse 325 for patriotic events. And the check is going into, if we accept it, is going to be paid for the same thing that the patriotic events line item pays for. I believe that is not what you're referring to, Councilor Leahy. Okay. But if you want to be safe, we'll find out by next week.
Thank you.
Okay, but we did have Jesus in our last meeting, and Councilor McGee is correct. This is exactly what he told us was coming, and it just needed to get here in this form so we can accept it if we so
Great job.
choose. Any other discussion?
I make a motion to approve it.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Moving along.
What else is there?
There's 2 more.
There are
There's is it 13, from the DPW, from forestry?
Did we do 12?
Yeah,
Yeah, we did that.
I only see one last item for the
Hi.
13 is the taxi.
Taxis.
Taxi, I got that in front of me, but I've got something here which I have no idea.
Joe, I don't see anything else.
Not on the agenda.
Well, that's probably a good reason why nobody's here. All right, let's talk about the taxis. Item 13 is a request for 6 taxi cab, I believe they're new taxi cabs. Motion to remove from the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? Counselor, me and former members of the Finance Committee, and I know I've been to many of these meetings, but I'm told that this gentleman from is it Yellow Cab? Yellow Cab is difficult to get a hold of and kind of shows up when he shows up.
No, he's pretty good, Joe.
okay.
There's been 2 times we were told he was contacted, and I don't think he really was. Because when he came in the 3rd time, this is kind of a repeat for him. He usually has his cars not usually, he always has them inspected by the police and state police at that joint venture. And then, it's just a renewal of the licenses. But he does go in there, and actually I saw him. So, I mean, he's usually really good at making sure these are all. I mean, we can always table it and take it up again, but he's not an unknown party.
Okay,
I go along with Counselor McGee. He's been coming in ever since I've been on the Finance Subcommittee, and I have no issues with it.
the information, the insurance liability certificates are here. The cab numbers, and I'm glad to hear he understands they have to be inspected by the police department, which is important. And it looks to be in order as far as what he needs to present to the city. It's just a question of if there are any questions, for him.
You know what the real issue I have, Joe, and it's not with him, is he comes in, he gives us the money, files the paperwork, does the inspection, does everything, he pays. You know who doesn't? Uber or
Left.
of which I filed orders and it was approved to tax them accordingly. We still have yet to receive that from legal. This guy's doing it. He's following all the rules. His car's inspected to make sure it's safe. For our residents, those are not.
Great point.
Well, the way our laws read, technically, the license is to pick up in the town limits. So if the police department wanted to enforce it, we'd probably all be not too happy campers with the voters, but they could stop Uber and Lyft from picking up until they do get licenses.
Well, it's not to get voters mad, but to me, the process is in place to make sure the car is safe, that the driver's safe. I mean, there's a whole procedure for taxis, pick up and drop off. When it comes to Uber, just because they set up a magical account, they don't follow it. That is my issue. It's actually putting residents in.
I understand and I concur. It's just the only leverage we have is the only enforcement we have is if they're not licensed, they can't operate and they can't pick up. They can drop off, but they can't pick up. Yeah, that's the only leverage we have in taxi cabs, any of these, and I see a lot more of the vans, what do they call them, the van service, but they're picking up huge amounts of people.
That's the one with the ones that go to the airport, or?
Yes, there's a name for it though. It's,
Is that under livery though? Or?
Livery service or
might be,
something?
yeah, livery is limos and it's short of being a bus or a minibus, but. Well, I have no problem if there's no questions, if the paperwork does appear to be in order. And
Is this a renewal then?
I think it's new cars.
these are listed as new.
No? Okay.
He just puts, it's like every 2 years he puts a new fleet in.
Good fleet in, yes.
Yeah.
And we do have the make, the age, and the vehicle with a VIN number, what's gonna be the registration number. Like I said, the most important, the certificate of insurance, liability insurance. So the chair would entertain a motion to adopt and ask the city council to recommend. upon inspection from the police department if they haven't. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. The item I was referring to is not on the agenda, although it looks like it should have been, and that's $20,000 in the tree climber to $20,000 contract services. I suggest we lay that on the table and we'll get it into another meeting. And before we make that magical motion to adjourn, we're scheduled for next Monday. There's a couple orders. Councilor McGee, I believe you have one that I had hoped to have on an off Monday so we could have good discussions. Yours would be the Commonwealth Group Insurance, the GIC health insurance, if we can get the parties available. And then there was the recycling program, which I know you did some work on it last year.
Where does that stand, Joe?
We never, well, according to this, it wasn't, but
We
You and I filed
took
for
it, what happened, Joe, I think there's confusion on that one. That's why when I saw it come in, I was gonna ask, I forgot. We filed one order, took it up with DPW, and I think the committee agreed that the price was too high, the number. So
Yes.
they recommended a different number, and this came from Counselor Bartley, of which Dave said he didn't have a problem with the lower number now, just in case, too many bins are bought and there's too much money in the account. So then, I think on the floor, we took up an order that was filed with the new number and pulled from committee. Dave's merged was wanting to pass it as the new one. I think that's where the confusion lies. It was passed.
okay. These numbers would have been the 15,000.
They had 25 and went down to 15.
Okay, so I don't know why this is here then, because this would be the one that passed.
Maybe it was a copy.
This is, looks like the original.
It does look the original.
Well, I think the original is here because we took it, suspended the rules that night,
Put it off the floor.
pulled it off the floor. So it probably
Okay.
was sent to.
So if it's passed, it's housekeeping I can do. If it's not passed, we'll just remove it from the committee and take whatever action we have to do. There's a couple things that we had on the table, and the other one was Counselor Valentine's order for the assessors, but I learned today that it may be difficult to get both assessors in next Monday. So what's gonna happen in the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna notify the auditor, the mayor's office, and ask all department heads that any request for transfers, whether it's free cash or interdepartment, be done and before us, before our first meeting in June. And if they aren't, all bets are off as far as, what could happen if they come in on the last meeting in June, and we're not gonna have time to have a finance committee meeting and get, in the fiscal year and get a recommendation back. Hopefully, we'll be in the middle of budget talks too, Mr. President. It would be nice. I've asked a couple of questions, and it seems like to be the biggest mystery in the world. Our 45 days, if we received it next meeting, 45 days will go to June 27th. If we don't receive it by the next meeting, we could be going into the next fiscal year, which hasn't happened in over a decade. But with that as it be, I'll keep the agenda for next week, but if we can't get the assessors, we could still do the insurance and a couple other of these minor ones. And then there's a meeting scheduled, 2 meetings scheduled for June, but I'm gonna work with Todd as far as budget hearings, and we'll keep one of them for transfers that we have to do, before the big meeting, the last meeting in June. Does that make sense?
What happened with the software, 79,000?
We voted for it.
We voted for it. Rory came in, and Jimmy asked the most questions. Said the city's telephone system bombed late last year, and they had enough money in the IT budget to replace a lot of the hardware and do things, somewhat piecemeal. And this is in addition, the money is running out in the IT budget for the next 2.5 months. This is in addition to upgrade some hardware and software related to the telephone system. And Councilor Leahy asked 1,000 questions, if you want to pipe in.
No, I guess what happened was, and you probably know this, I remember this vaguely, that the phone system went down. He says our system was very antiquated. In fact, our voicemail was actually on, 5.5 floppy disks.
System was 23 years old.
23 years old. and so it crashed and went down, and certain things needed to be updated right away, protection, and so this is the final bills for that.
Why was our account short?
Because they used more money in the IT line item than anticipated because of replacing the system. And now they're looking to replace the IT line item to get through the rest of the fiscal year.
Joe, the reason I bring it up. is
I'm just
because
telling you the
they
answer.
moved That office there, they moved that office there, and every time they move things around, and we did request once, of which Bellamy sent it, was a $50,000 bill for moving computers and wiring around. Of which we've said, stop moving offices around, it's causing a problem budget-wise. You have a shortfall because of that.
You didn't say that, wow.
Of course he's not.
No, I didn't know that.
To me, I will take that up at the full meeting. I would like it tabled because I want an itemized expense of every office and every IT that they moved around and all the costs associated with it. We found out from this one department going downstairs, the cost to it.
So you want to take this back up? We could recall
Yeah,
this.
we already voted on it.
Can't we?
I don't think you can rescind the vote. We voted.
You
It
can
wasn't,
always,
I don't think you can do that once you vote on it.
No, we just, same thing as full city council, we can reconsider it.
Oh, at
and-
the council meeting?
Yeah, no, right now. We're still in session.
We're still in session, yeah.
Oh, I know that, but
that's the problem.
Well,
They use that money from different areas.
okay, so I understand, and that's legitimate. Do we want to do it at committee level next
I'd rather do
Monday?
it right here. And
Okay.
have it tabled and have them come
All
in
right,
with
so I would
all-
suggest we reconsider our action. I'll call Rory myself personally and tell him what we're looking for, and we can take it up next Monday. Okay? So on a motion to reconsider, all those in favor? Any opposed? On the motion to lay the $79,000 for the IT expenses on the table, all those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. Anything else?
are we still having the meeting next Monday then?
Yes, we'll have at least, because we got three tabled items this evening. It may not be, the GIC will be a good one, and unless I can work out the assessors, that's the one that I wanted the time for, but we need it because I anticipate, even though there's not a lot of free cash, that there's gonna be a lot of requests coming up in the next full city council meetings.
Councilor McGivern, I'll suggest this to Ryan, but I think when we have people coming in front of us requesting money and whatnot, it'd be helpful if they had line items and broken down and paperwork. Tonight, we had some great people in front of us, but everything was kind of ballpark. Nothing was very specific. Nobody had any paper in front of them, except for Paul. I think just Paul.
The chief,
Did he?
the police chief
But it
has.
seemed like everything was very not specific. You know, if I'm going to my direct supervisor and I'm asking a request, I'm gonna have everything, I'm gonna have all the Ts crossed.
I think that's a good point, Counselor Leahy. I think there's room for improvement, and I think, it starts in the auditor's office, but it really starts in, begins in room one. And the auditor usually, on behalf of room one, puts these items together, and then department heads are responsible to get into as many specifics as they can. If you know that everything we have in front of us, there are different things attached to it.
Yeah.
But they don't make the agenda, and they don't always make the discussion the way they should, unless we ask. Anything else?
Motion adjourned?
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
Sir.
We can sit adjourned.